All right, cool. Welcome back to the Zach Clark Show. I am super excited about our guest today, Lindsey Metselaar, who has done a lot of things. I started to look into you, and I was so impressed. You have your podcast, We Met at Acme, plus a litany of other kind of social media pages, and you kind of get into your brand. You realize how much you've done. So thanks for being here, Lindsey.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited that you're here, and as you guys know, we're just trying to have conversations with people who, are doing good work in the world, and you happen to be sober, which, we share that common bond, which I appreciate.
Yes.
6 years and
6 years, October 30th, which is a crazy time. What was the date? Your date?
I'm August 30th of 2011.
Okay. I mean, that's hard too, right? Like getting sober on Halloween and getting sober in the middle of the summer. Those are two tough times to get sober.
Yeah. I always say, like, to get sober in August, like, you had to be pretty fucked up.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just
100%.
like, like right before Labor Day and the summer's like coming to an end. It was just, that was the day that it was going to happen.
Right. Like to end your summer willingly is you have a lot of will.
Yeah. And I feel intimidated right now because really you should be on the other side of this, which hopefully I will come on,
yes,
on your podcast,
Can't
but
wait
maybe
to
I'll
have
learn
you.
a couple things here along the way. So super grateful you're here. I want to start with, you have a 6-month-old son.
I do.
At home, and his name is Zachary.
Same as Zachary. And I have to tell you,
I want to dig here because
my husband and I are obsessed with the name. And part of the reason, and this is a testament to you as well, we don't know one bad guy whose name's Zachary. Like, does anyone know a guy who's just like, wow, Zachary's such an asshole? Never, right? Like, think about all the Zacharys people listening. Everyone's just a good dude.
I like that. I appreciate that. So it's amazing. So I was like, I like to research my guests. So I was kind of going through, it was either your personal page or the podcast page, and there was a picture of you with Zachary. But in the caption, it said Zachy, Zachy, which is what my mom calls me.
Really?
And I like she's the only person that calls me Zachy. So I had this moment of like, okay, I'm excited to talk to Lindsey because there's a lot going on here.
Oh my God, I'm getting like a future forward to my son talking about what I call him.
Yeah. Yeah. I was actually growing up convinced that Zachary's or Zachs did not live past the age of 30 because as I'm growing up, I had never met someone that was really older than me.
Yeah.
But I think the name's gotten more popular.
Oh no, it's because the name is definitely, I wouldn't say it's like new, but it started probably like 40 years ago.
Okay.
Maybe 35.
That makes
You might
sense.
have started it.
I might be the first.
Are you named after anyone?
I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
so bad with that shit.
Yeah.
My middle name is my dad's middle name. Like we share a middle name, but I don't.
What is it?
William.
Okay. That's a strong name too.
Zachary William Clark.
Yeah. Williams are good guys, except I feel like Prince William might be a cheater, but
We don't like cheaters.
we don't.
That's like a no-fly zone for me. As I'm sure for you. So
Totally.
So where do you want to start? So let's start. So where the podcast We Met at Acme. I'm very curious. Did you start that? Well, let's start with your journey. You grew up in New York City.
I grew up in New York City. I went to school in Boston, came back to New York, was like always okay. So I'll do like my sobriety story into the podcast.
Yeah.
Was one of those kids growing up who was just like, I'm never going to do drugs and I'm never going to have sex. Like I'm going to wait till marriage to have sex. And
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have an older sister and
Okay.
she was like super into, partying. And I think that's what like turned me off initially.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I'm better, like I'm not going to be like her.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm never going to do drugs. Like I always wanted to be the favorite child. And I thought that that's like how I would achieve that as well.
Uh-huh.
And I also like was on honor roll. Like I was a really good student, whatever. And I hated alcohol. Like I hated the taste of it. I remember I would like try to drink a beer and be cool with everyone. And then I was like, ugh. And I would just pour it in the sink at parties and like pretend I drank it. And so I was like, I'll never, care about this shit. And I actually just hadn't found my like drink of choice yet
Okay.
that I liked. And I hadn't found my, drug of choice yet. So I just like wrote it off. Like I'm not going to be into it.
Right.
And then everyone started like going to the park and smoking pot.
Central Park.
Growing up in the city, like that was our backyard. It's like,
is it safe to go to the park?
Not today.
No, right?
And it wasn't then either. Like we got jumped once. I'm not even kidding. I swear to God, like 8th graders got jumped
by just random New York,
like other kids, but like scary kids.
Oh, I love that.
And so we were like going to the park and smoking weed, and like that was probably the first time I inhaled. And I was like, oh, this is the best, you know.
Don't they say you don't get high the first time you inhale? Or is that?
I think I was just having like a cough attack, but
right.
I still was like, this is cool, whatever's happening.
Right.
And then when I did get high
so you swore off drugs until 8th grade.
Well,
it's like I'm gonna be in 5th grade. You were committed to the no sex, no drug life.
Well, so that wasn't like my real experience that kind of took to me, right? It was again in 11th grade, my junior year, when I like revisited weed, and I was like, this is amazing. And I was laughing, and I had like the real high experience. And I started to like slowly try other alcohol other than beer, like wine and tequila.
Did they have a Zima back then? Do you remember Zima?
What is that?
Zima was like this really...
Is it like Franzi?
No, it was like a malt... I don't know, but that shit was around and popping. I'm 40 when
schnapps or whatever.
No, it was like a almost like a lemon malt Zima. I don't know, but I feel like that was what a lot of people were getting drunk on when I was.
Interesting.
It's hard to keep up. Like I don't even know what the fuck the kids are drinking today.
I'm scared of what they're drinking today. But so then it was like off to the races with weed. And when I went to college, I was like into tequila and it was like the weed
Boston
and tequila.
University. Mm-hmm. Okay.
The weed and tequila situation was my jam. And then got back to the city, like, but by that point was smoking weed like all day, every day. Like,
when does that start? Does that start in college?
Started probably like end of freshman year of college.
Okay.
Was in like a crew that would, because we were living in the dorm, so we would like leave the dorms, go to the soccer field and smoke together. And it was hard to like be smoking all the time because I didn't have my own place.
Yeah.
So probably like sophomore year when I got back, it was all the time.
And this is how long? Is this like?
This was.
You were smoking flower, right? Like you were smoking the actual.
I was
bud,
smoking spliffs actually.
But because the kids today are smoking the oils and the vapes.
Oh,
and the dabs.
no,
you were smoking the actual
I didn't
plant.
give a fuck about that stuff.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I was hitting a bong or rolling a joint with
Yes.
weed and tobacco.
Right.
Like that was my thing. I couldn't believe the weed pens. I thought they were there was a small overlap with me still smoking in the weed pens, but I was like, these are so stupid.
Yeah.
So stupid.
That's one of my, even like the nicotine, like I've never taken a hit of the vapes. Like I'll have an occasional cigar, or even if I'm being really bad, a cigarette, but like the vape.
It's so dumb. Like the whole point is like the art of it,
right.
You know, it's
right.
like
I'm
cool. You're holding a thing, you roll a thing. And so everyone was smoking the same amount as me at college. So it just didn't feel like I had a problem. Like, why would I have a problem? And I was so obsessed with it. And I thought it made me so cool and so chill. Because I'm super type A. So I was like, this is making me like that easygoing girl, you know, that like everyone wants to hang out with.
Yeah.
But it was obviously like really numbing me out. And there were certain things that happened in my family in college that like I didn't even get to experience. Like deaths, like my aunt died, my grandpa died, and I was so like far removed.
So you just didn't show up for that stuff?
I did show up, but I was high. Like I was I was in outer space.
That's the thing I think people miss about sobriety for me. Like the initial fear I had of, you know, like flying, going to a funeral, going to a wedding, like doing any of these things sober was such a foreign concept. But then once you walk through that you realize that being present and being connected at those events is really what life is all about. And like I have a different, you know, mindset when it comes to death now. It's like, how beautiful is it that I get to show up and honor this person and their life and not be in the bathroom snorting Coke.
It's so true. And it also makes you look back and like cringe so hard at yourself because you're like, wow, how dare I give a speech at someone's funeral? Hi. Like, who the fuck did I think I was?
Right.
That's embarrassing.
Right.
Or like at a wedding or whatever. And so fast forward.
Just real quick on that. It's like when people, I always laugh when people get sober, like they'll be like, I don't want anyone to know. Like, I can't have them find out that I'm sober. Like, did you see yourself drunk?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think they thought then?
Right.
It's like, come on.
So ridiculous. Like, yeah, if anything, you should like be wearing that on your shirt that you're sober.
Right.
People would be thrilled. And cut to like, I turned 27, still smoking all the time, like always high, tequila at night. So like blacking out basically like all the time. And choosing like in relationships.
And
but
where are you living?
I'm living in the city.
Okay.
I'm choosing relationships where like they will allow this behavior. Like I would not be with someone who was like, you should stop smoking or you shouldn't like drink tequila.
Anyone that was going to question that part of your life was off the list.
Off the list. And I got dumped on my 27th birthday by a guy who actually sucked. Like he was not like, you know, someone that pointed me in the direction of sobriety by any means.
Yeah.
But I got dumped then, and that's how the podcast.
Do you know what he's up to today?
He's getting divorced.
Okay. We don't have to smile, but like.
I mean, you know.
You know, I get it.
But because I was very single, and you know, I throughout my like weed smoking and this and that, I happened to still have really good game with dating. Okay. And like all my friends were coming to me for, you know, texting advice, dating advice, whatever. And I loved dating. I loved talking about it.
Was that just in your soul? Like you just knew, you just got
deeply
like,
in my soul.
Yeah.
I was just like obsessed. And we briefly touched on astrology, but I'm a Libra, and Libras are just like obsessed with love. Like we just love love. We love people's stories, whatever. And
did that make you confused? Like, did you like just love everyone, or like once you met someone, you were able to commit to that person?
Like a mixture.
Okay.
Yeah. And
very fascinating.
and I was like, I need to talk about dating because I thought I was an expert. I just got dumped on my 27th birthday. So that's what made me start the podcast. Started talking with friends. It expanded to like celebrities, influencers, therapists, dating coaches. And the embarrassing part throughout this whole first year of my podcast is that I'm smoking weed on the podcast.
Like, we'd be sitting here.
Oh yeah, like a Joe Rogan like style, like weed smoking.
Which probably didn't hurt the brand early.
I mean, it was before like people were doing that. It was like weird to do it because at the time the podcasts were only like true crime and news.
Right.
And then like a girl smoking weed talking about dating.
You're kind of a trailblazer.
I guess. But I remember, like, I look back and you know who Jerry Ferrara is?
Yes, like loosely, yes.
Yeah, Turtle from Entourage.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah.
Amazing guy.
Okay.
Came on my podcast, and at the time I was recording in my apartment, which is like good on him. Like such a good guy for coming over to like this girl's apartment. We had a mutual friend, so it wasn't totally random.
Right.
But I thought that he was a weed smoker too. Because like he's Turtle from Entourage. Right. And that's what they do on the show, and that's his character and whatever. So I was like hitting a joint. I was like, "Do you want some?" And he was like, "No, I'm good. Like I don't do that anymore." And I feel like that was the first time where I was like, "Wow, this is more like I'm mortified by myself." You know, because I thought I'm still under the impression that this is really cool of me.
Right. And
like makes me that like cool stoner girl. But no.
It's so fascinating because I feel like that's the power in our stories, right? Like that's the power in not like I sit here, I talk about being sober, but I like to talk about a bunch of other shit, but I think people see or know that I am sober, and then it's like they go out with me or we go to the place and there's drugs around and I'm like, no, I'm good. And people are like, well, how do you do that? I'm like, it's not like you were saying, it's not even a thought anymore. And I think for you, was he sober? Or he just was like,
no, he was just like, yeah, I don't do that. And I was like, it's cool to see someone that you think is cool and that you respect being like cool with themselves, not doing something, you know, like it's weird to see someone not give in to peer pressure so effortlessly.
Right.
And you're like, why can't I do that?
Right.
You know, like, or why am I creating the peer pressure? Like, who am I?
So what happens from there? You have this moment, you do the podcast.
So
it
I
goes
have that
fine,
moment. It goes great. He's awesome. You know, a few more months pass, and I definitely start to have like the willingness to get sober. I'm like,
Did you know at that point? Did you know anyone like in your circle or in your peripheral that was?
yes.
Okay.
I had one friend who was sober, but I didn't know her full story, and I thought that she was just like doing it for attention. Like I was like, she just like wants friends.
Yeah.
And she was like, will you come support me at a meeting?
Okay.
Like a sober meeting in AA. And I was like, sure. Like, God, like, you know, she really needs my support.
Yeah.
I think, you know,
I'm gonna be a good friend.
right. Anyone who's sober knows that if you invite someone to a meeting with you, you don't need their support. You're trying to show them the way.
Right.
But I didn't know that. And so I went to this meeting with her, and at the end of the meeting, everyone's hugging her, saying hi. I'm like, you needed this. Like, you wanted this like ego boost of friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is why you're doing this, you know? Like, I didn't think anything about it having related to me.
Meanwhile, there's a lot of places you can go to get friends outside of like
I guess.
meetings. but,
Right,
yeah.
right. And so I had that experience. And then for me, though, even though like tequila was a weakness of mine, the weed was like my thing that I couldn't live without. And a lot of people don't realize that weed is very addicting, especially today. It's
Right.
so much stronger than it used to be.
Yep.
And you could have, I think there's like, I forgot the name of it. I wish I remember, but there's a disease that you can get now from smoking too much weed. Do you guys know what I'm talking
I mean,
about?
there's like
It's-
there's marijuana-induced psychosis. I mean, people like
Well,
the mental
that,
health is.
But there's like you start vomiting uncontrollably. We're going to figure out what it's called because it's a real thing.
Want to Google that?
But I started to have like a small case of that, I think, because when I wasn't smoking, I couldn't eat. I was like super nauseous.
I've heard that. Like I've heard. So it's interesting. I told you a little bit about what we do at Release, and when we started back in 17, I mean, it was kind of like your garden variety alcoholics, the people that just could not stop drinking, and then your heroin addicts, or your quote unquote pillheads.
Right.
Today, I would tell you that if we have 60 people in our census or in our community, 40% of them are weed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wild.
Yeah. And like they say like gateway drug, but
Yeah,
it's
bullshit.
not, but like
It's a drug.
It's a drug. And then also I was at the point where I was really loving, and this one is very popular right now, the microdosing of shrooms.
Yes.
And everyone thinks it's like, it changed my life and it made me a better person. And it's like, no, you're just fucking partying, bro. Like, you're not. And I was so triggered because a sober girl came on my podcast. She's actually a famous person. I'm not going to say who she is.
Yeah.
But if like anyone wants to go back and figure it out, they probably could. And she was
Sherlock
like,
Holmes, get on that.
and she was, you know, preaching sobriety, and she had been sober for 10 years. And then she starts telling me about like her shroom trips.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like mind or mood altering. What don't you understand?
Yeah.
You know? And that was me towards the end of, you know, my stint. I was like all about the chocolate shrooms, popping them like all the time. I think like right before you get sober, it's like you are willing to do anything to escape your mind.
Right.
Like anything.
Yeah, I missed the whole shroom train. Like when I was eating mushrooms, we would get them in a plastic bag, and it was the actual mushrooms.
Right,
that were,
right.
Like, eating the caps and spinning out and heaven knows what. But I think it's been challenging for me as someone who's, you know, a large part of my existence is recovery, and I've been invited to every weekend shaman,
Right,
bufo, toad, whatever the
crazy.
hell, like have the experience. And I'm like,
Ayahuasca, and by the way, if you're listening, you're like, it actually really helped me with grief or whatever, and I'm like, I don't have a problem, like, and I worked with a coach, whatever. Like, there are exceptions.
Yes.
There are people who don't need that, like, aren't addicts, that aren't alcoholics, that don't, you know, that do have good experiences with mushrooms, that heal from a loss or whatever it is. So like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like actual people that call themselves sober, but they excuse themselves to like,
Right.
you know, do that stuff.
No, it's confusing too. It's just confusing for the person that's trying to get sober. And I believe that there should be like a wide berth and a wide entry into this. I think that's the beauty of a lot of 12-step programs is they kind of say just like, come and check us out. Like,
Right.
you know, like if you want to like look at your relationship with alcohol, like we're here. As much as we can like widen that front door, I'm with it. But there's a difference. Like I was at a party this weekend and a large number of folks were, you know, microdosing shrooms, and they were talking to me about the benefits of that instead of doing blow. And I'm like, okay, cool, that's all good. The difference between them and me is I'm waking up on Sunday morning and I'm like eating another handful of mushrooms, or like I'm going to the bathroom and doing another line of blow. Like they're like going home and, you know, hanging out with their kids, and they don't think about it for another 3 months, you know? Like,
exactly. It's like you got to play the tape forward.
Yeah.
Did you look up what it's called? CHS, exactly. It's a real thing, CHS. So like if you're curious, Google it. It's crazy. There's a huge like community online for people who have it. It's a real thing. And so I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep without weed. So that's when. And
are you like, what is your love life at this moment? Are you still dating?
I always have a boyfriend, but it's someone that like I don't really care about and clearly doesn't care about me because they're not stopping me from doing anything. But I'm not letting them either. So.
But you're doing the podcast. You're like the dating expert. You're dating kind of these like.
Well, I'm dating guys who like also probably have a problem, so we both kind of look the other way at this point.
Any of these dudes get sober?
Not yet.
Okay.
There's 2 exes of mine who still need to at some point, but we'll see.
Yeah.
And so I have a willingness. It's the morning, and I wake up, and I'm like, I don't want to smoke today, and I do. It's like 9 a.m. And I happened to be on GChat at the time. Do you remember GChat?
I mean, vaguely, yeah.
It's like no one uses it anymore, but it's like we all used to be at our computers working, and like we would use Gmail, GChat to talk.
Your friends.
Yeah. And I G-chatted my sober friend who had brought me to the AA meeting, and I was like, this is so random, but like, are there meetings for weed? And like, that sounds crazy, no? Right? And she's like, actually, like she'd done a quick Google search. She's like, I just found a meeting. It's 5 minutes away from you, and it starts in 5 minutes. And I was like, that's crazy. It's like, I guess I have to go. So I went to the meeting. I was
like a Marijuana Anonymous meeting?
A Marijuana Anonymous meeting. I was so scared. I don't like talking to, like, I don't know. I'm just I was so scared in those situations. Like at the time, I didn't even go to a workout class because I didn't want anyone to like look at me. Like I was, because I had like weird paranoia, like psychosis
you could figure it out.
Weed. Yeah. I was so paranoid.
Yeah.
And so I was like, fuck it. And I happened to have like all the moments of like all the God moments on my way to this meeting. Like the elevator was waiting on my floor. Like I walked to the meeting, like the sun was on me.
The ocean just parts.
The ocean parted. And I walked in, and like such a sweet, friendly guy was like, welcome in, like grab a chair. And I was like, I'll listen to what these people have to say, you know, like, and then I'll go and like smoke because I haven't smoked in an hour. So I'm going to get super high.
Yeah.
And I left that meeting and I never smoked again.
No shit.
Or drank or anything. Totally sober since that day. So weird.
It's not weird. It's amazing. And like, kudos to you. I think people get so caught up on like as humans, I think we like tend to judge people, right? So you walk into like, I'm just picturing the room, whether it's like the Mustard Seed or one of these like, you know, places in New York City where, you know, people meet, and someone like with this podcast and having some success, and could very easily judge the people in that room, and instead of saying like, this guy was like very kind and welcoming, like run the other way because it's a guy that's greeting you that, you know, has nothing to offer you.
Totally. I mean, especially in the weed meetings themselves, like I was like, I'm basically the only girl in these meetings.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is just weird, you know, but
Do you
like
miss it?
Miss the meetings?
No, the weed.
Oh, no, I honestly don't. Like I did. There will be times where I'm like seeing some like 3D movie and I'm like, you know what would make this movie better? But then I'm like, then the rest of the year, like or the rest of the day, same thing with you. Like the rest of the day, I'd be like chasing that feeling again. I
mean, unpopular opinion, I think weed fucking sucks. Like I don't see any of the benefit. I get paranoid. Mm-hmm. I get a ton of energy. So like I would take bong hits and then have to like go play basketball because I would just like my mind would be racing.
Yeah.
I wasn't like a curl under the covers guy and watch, movies. And it just, I don't know, you eat food and you sleep. It just fucking sounds so lazy and lame.
No,
me.
it is. And like once I had a few years under my belt, because I have friends who were smoking just as much, and like I saw them, I just saw the way that they were and they are or whatever. And I was just like, I can't believe I was like this, like I see it, or like you go meet someone and they reek of this smell, and I'm just like, I can't believe that was me,
So I'm very curious because a lot of the questions I get, so you get sober, you go to this meeting, you stop smoking, like, congratulations, first of all. It fucking rocks. It's the best.
Thank you.
I feel like people like us, we know that this life is so beautiful. But so you had that experience, but you're still like this young, attractive, single girl with this podcast living in New York. Like, what does the social life, how does this change your social life? Are you like cool to like go to the club Friday night? Are you like laying back for a minute? I think that's like a lot of what people question in early sobriety.
Yeah, it was really hard. I was in a relationship when I got sober, and technically they say not to like change your relationship status until you have a year.
Is that like real though? I think that's just all bullshit therapist talk.
I actually like it. Like don't date till you have a year, and I like don't change, like don't edit your shit, because I do feel like you don't really have the clarity until you get to a year. And so like, but like you don't really know. So it probably took me a year to be like, this person is not the one for me. Like I knew along the way, but I was like, yeah, no, this person's not the one. So after a year, I ended that relationship, and then I was single.
And he was cool. Like he was like supportive and kind of understood what you were.
Oh, well, it was a little difficult because I think like he had some issues as well.
Yeah. And
so like that came to the surface. Like that was, I was having realizations of like, this guy definitely drinks a ton. He's not leaving the party with me. Like he wants to stay type of thing.
Yeah.
And so then I felt lonely, very lonely, like in my sobriety, and like I was the only advocate for myself, and I didn't feel like I had the support, like I would if I wanted, like if I were at a party of like his friends and I wanted water, like I'd have to ask him to get me water, whereas I feel like it's not so crazy to expect your partner who should be supporting you in new sobriety to like make sure there's like a Diet Coke for you or a water for you.
Whether he's supporting you in early sobriety or not, shouldn't the guy kind of like chivalry dead? Like, isn't it like, hey.
Totally. And I started to feel like I wasn't supported in that way. So that relationship ended. And now we're a little deep into the podcast at this point.
But just for a second.
Yeah.
And then have you told, like, because it's not the traditional, like a lot of people go to rehab or it's just like this long, arduous, kind of like chaotic. For you, it was kind of, you just had this moment of clarity, and like family, friends, like when did you start to tell people like, yeah, I'm just not drinking or doing drugs
I
anymore?
I was very hesitant to tell people at first because I didn't know if it was going to stick.
Right.
And I didn't want to like make someone happy and then make them sad, and
that's
like
very type
with a
A,
relapse.
like, I'm gonna make sure I have this thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so I didn't tell anyone really, except like my best friends, because like they would know if I wasn't smoking with them. And I remember I would like still, I would still go out to parties and to bars with friends. And there was one guy, and there's always one guy, right, who's like, take this shot. And you're like, no. And like, I'm good, not tonight. And he's like, no, you need to take this shot. And it's always that guy who like has a problem.
Yes, he's the guy. He's the fucking guy that needs to get sober.
Yeah.
I tell that to everyone. It's like, whoever's forcing cocktails down your fucking gullet needs to get sober.
Immediately. Because they're like, no, like, don't make me feel bad to do
Right.
this alone. And
Right.
it's like, bro, like. So I remember I took the shot and I just threw it over my shoulder. But like that happened a few times. And then I had my first sober wedding. And it was a shitty situation because I didn't have a +1 because I like wasn't really in a serious relationship. And it wasn't a close friend. And so I was like at a weird table, like blah, blah, blah. But then there was a God moment. higher power moment where the person that I was seated next to was sober.
No.
I swear to God.
Amazing.
It was so crazy. But it, again, was one of those weddings where, like, not only is there an open bar, but there's a bar cart that comes to your chair. And it's like, tequila? You want tequila?
Right.
So I just, like, bounced early. And then from there, I started to get more confident about it. I remember I told my parents that Thanksgiving, because it was October 30th. And then that Thanksgiving, like a month later, I told them. And they were so happy, but, like, also kind of confused, but happy, you know, whatever. And then I kind of
what does this mean? Are you
right? And then I came out with
parents?
It. Yeah, I kind of like came out with it from then on, like in like a always downplaying it way.
Yeah.
What was? I mean, I don't want to ask you because I want you to tell me on my podcast.
Me. It's fine. Ask. We'll do. I mean,
but like, were you like? How long did it take you to be very
gnarly? I mean, I had a knockdown. Like I was in rehab, and then I
left. No. But once you have it, right? Once you're sober, are you like telling people off the bat?
Well, I was in rehab for 4.5 months, so people were kind of like, "Where's Zach?"
Right,
you know?
right, right.
It wasn't like I like went to a meeting and then was like out with the guys at the game the next day. Like, hey, I'm just not drinking today. You know,
right,
it's like,
right.
What the fuck happened to this dude? He's just nowhere. You know, and this was back when like you actually went to rehab and they like took your phone. Like now, fucking you go to rehab now and it's like you can have your phone.
Yeah,
and, you know,
it's weird.
Whatever, but so for me personally, I say within that first year, I started to do a lot of this, which I had never done, like go to coffee with people. And like part of the recovery process is like the amends. And so it was really organic and natural for me. I mean, people knew that I had a problem. There was no questioning that. And then I just got like, I hit a point in that first year where I just got very comfortable with it. And I'm grateful for that because I feel like that's what holds a lot of people back is this guilt and shame they carry around, like, I don't know, being a failure or like having to get sober or whatever it is. But I found it to be almost empowering.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I like going back to being single in the city sober because people are so worried about that.
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
I would go out. Actually, I would go to Acme a lot. And there was one bartender specifically that I would always go to and be like, hey, can I just get a water? And I swear he must have been sober, but we never like discussed it because he was always like, I got you. Like he was just like, if there could have been a million people throwing their credit cards and like their cash at him. And he was like, no, I need to get her the water.
Right.
There's a lot of bartenders who really get it.
Yep.
They really like are like, don't underestimate the kindness of people. Like people understand sobriety more, but also I think today it's like cool to be sober.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah. I love that. I think with the bartend, yes, I think it's very cool to be sober. I think I would like to talk about that. The bar thing is always funny to me because I'm a people pleaser. So like when I go into a bar and people are ordering drinks around me, I'm like, all right, I have to leave the big tip. And like you, that's where like my alcoholism still fucks with me is like, you know, you can just get a water and leave a couple bucks, dude. You know, like I want to overcompensate for the fact that I'm
not getting a drink.
Yeah.
I feel that way too. I'm like, oh no, he just gave me a water. Like, what do I do for him?
Give me the water and
no, I've tried to tip on water before and they're like, absolutely not.
Right.
Like, keep your dollar. Thank you.
It's like that's an insult.
Yeah.
It's like, so, okay. So you're at a year, you're single. The podcast is kind of like taking
podcast
off.
is doing well. I was so scared. I'm like, I'm not going to be creative anymore now that I'm not smoking. But podcast, was doing better than ever. And then I met my husband.
At Acme or no?
No, in Miami.
Okay.
On New Year's.
Like classic love, like just saw each other and
like on the dance floor.
No shit.
It wasn't like as seamlessly classic. I was still dating someone else.
Wow.
But
okay.
There wasn't like we weren't, like we just like we knew each other from back in the day. Actually, my sober friend, the one I mentioned before, was the reason we knew each other. She went to high school with him.
Okay.
So I kind of knew who he was. So we just like said hi. And then that relationship I was in had like passed its expiration date. So eventually I ended up breaking up with that guy. And I reached back out to Steven and I was like, I'm single now. Like,
is that the message? Just I'm single now?
Basically.
I love it.
Because he had like hit on me that night, but I was with someone. And so I was like, I'm single now. We can like go have a drink.
Yeah.
Cause I know you want to.
I'm the worst. Like I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I have some like, I don't know if people are hitting on me or not, or they're just being nice. Like I've always struggled with that.
It's hard for guys. It's very easy for women. Like if a guy talks to you, he's hitting on you basically.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like women are nice. Like we could talk to you and have no interest.
I feel like women also get hit on more than guys, so you guys know how to like get out if you need to.
Yeah, definitely.
And be funny about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Like guys don't know how to get out of being hit on.
And then they end up married with 4 kids and then decide they want to get out. I've seen that story, trust me, in my life. Like it's
yeah, that's
guys
tough.
are soft. Guys, they can't.
Yeah, they're lonely. We were just talking about this. Yeah.
It's really hard for them to break up. It's hard for them to be honest a lot of times. Like it just in my experience with some of my guy friends, it's because at the end of the day, I think we feel this responsibility to be the strong one and like the leader and the patriarch. And when the relationship doesn't work, it's like, and then you throw some alcoholism into that. It's insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
truly.
So you said something that I think is, well, when you say like sobriety is cool or getting like, what is your thoughts on what you're seeing in the world today?
Yeah, I'm seeing so many men and women being like, I'm just not drinking right now.
Yeah.
Not necessarily being sober,
Yeah.
you know, but just choosing not to drink on dates because they don't want to. And people responding in a really cool way to them.
Yeah.
Like I was recently talking to a girl, I was on her podcast and she was like, you know, like, I know you're sober. She was like, I don't really drink. And I was like, that's awesome. And she's single and dating. And she was like, I was so nervous because like, I don't have a reason not to drink. She's like, I just don't really want to. Like, I don't want to wake up the next day and feel shitty and whatever. She was like, I was really nervous for dating. And like, I go out on dates and only like 1 guy out of 10 would be like, no, have a drink. Every other guy's like, great, I would love to drink less. Like, I would love to not drink tonight. You know, it's like people are just waiting for the other person to make it okay. No one's like dying to have a bunch of drinks on dates. And by the way, they're expensive. It's like $30 a drink.
Yeah. I just remember like dating in early sobriety, talking to someone, shout out Jay. And I was like going on this date and I was totally like panicked. And he's like, the worst thing that happens is this girl judges you for not drinking. And if she does that, then you have your answer. Like this relationship is not going anywhere and you kind of like get through it and you move on. Right? If someone's really going to sit there and be like, what do you mean you don't drink? And they're horrified by that, you got your answer as to whether this person is going to be a, you know, good partner, let alone like, you know, casual, whatever.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, anyone who judges that, again, like not to, you know, take other people's inventories, but like if you can't be with someone who's sober.
Yeah, what's that say about you?
Yeah.
And I haven't like outwardly, and maybe I'm just lucky. I mean, I've been on, you know, hundreds of dates in New York and I've never had the outward, like the outward reaction of like, what do you mean you don't drink? Like there's always questions behind that, but also for me, like it's my livelihood, it's my work. It's like, what do you do for work? Oh, well, like I run a treatment center. It's like, tell me more about that. Well, I'm just gonna hit this head on. I was a heroin addict and turn my life around. And then they're just kind of like, okay, that's really cool, you know. And then they want to like know more.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just like when you take away the drugs and the drinking and like, you know, all that stuff, and like you have just the person, and like if you have a great connection with the person, there's literally no need for anything else, like for any enhancements like that. And it's a really beautiful thing because my relationship with my husband, he's never I've only ever been sober in our relationship, and it's the sweetest thing in the world. Because like, and
he drinks, he's a normie.
He's a normie. I mean, he doesn't really care for alcohol. Like he'll never drink at home. Like he'll drink to make like, you know, if we're on a double date, he doesn't want the other couple to like feel weird or whatever. He drinks. Like he's never like forcing himself, but like he's not like, I need a glass of wine. What a day, you know?
Yeah.
But it's just a really amazing thing because that has nothing to do with our story. Like it's just him and I and our connection and none of that. which is like so
Yeah,
rare.
it's beautiful. So as a girl, like, let me ask you this for the guy, because like, you know, I bring a lot of guys up, I mentor a lot of guys, and dating is it's a huge trigger. It's a huge thing that people, I think men especially, think about when they get sober. Your friends that aren't sober, just the girlies or whatever you refer to them as, like how would they react to dating someone that's sober? Like what is their thoughts around that? Do you have like?
I'm going to be honest with you, and I feel bad saying it, but I do think there's a double standard with sober women and sober men. I think that people are less likely to want to date sober men than sober women. And I know that sounds fucked up.
Why?
I think that women are terrified of their partner relapsing way more than like a man is terrified of their female partner relapsing.
Right.
And I think that sober man, it can do well dating if they have really strong sobriety, but they have to have really strong sobriety. Otherwise it's like scary.
Yeah.
And I have a friend who dated a sober guy, former heroin addict.
Yeah.
And he relapsed.
Yeah.
And he was doing heroin behind her back. And like it totally fucked her up. And like she's still not okay.
Yeah.
And I think that that can be really scary. And I'm not saying that women are better at sobriety than men, but women are just less scary than men. You know, like we're terrified of men as women. And you take like a man who has like a really like a big struggle, and it's hard because like traditionally we want to be like the drama in the relationship. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yes.
And I feel so bad and guilty saying it because I think sober men are incredibly amazing and so beautiful, but it's, I think, a little harder. And it's like the one thing where men are like, you know, in a tougher position than women.
But I think it's also just for men, like it's more reason to actually do the work.
Yeah.
To actually get well, like to actually, you know, recover. And that's the thing that always blows my mind, you know, men or women, is like people will come to me or come to us or to you and start to ask questions about like, how did you do it? And then you start to tell them, and it's not rocket science, but they pick and choose what they want to do. And they kind of like stay on that seesaw for many years because they're just not willing to surrender and be open to that moment like you did.
Yeah, no, it's hard. And like, I think people in general can be closed-minded to sober people because they're like, well, why should I date someone who has a problem when I could date someone who doesn't?
Yeah.
And it's like,
now I feel bad for all the dudes out there.
Because we're super people. We're everyone I know who's sober has like an X factor. Like it's just like a cool person.
Yeah.
Like I'm like that doesn't bore me, you know? Like I feel like
that made me smile so hard. Like that's
it's true.
Yeah.
I really do believe that. Like my sober friends are the most interesting people in the world.
Yeah.
And I fucking love them. Like they're so cool.
I agree. I mean, especially in New York City. I mean, like you run around this city long enough and you kind of do what we do and hang out with the people. Like you're going to meet some really fucking cool people and smart people and caring people. And you're going to
people.
Yes.
Which is so cool. I mean, the most self-aware people you'll ever meet, like, is just like you're able to just have a conversation with someone and like they could say something that offends you and you're like, what the fuck was that? And they're like, oh, it's my defects.
I think that's the one thing that I like when it comes to dating normies, right? Like for me that has come up is I do believe that sobriety has just given me this, like I'm almost like hyper aware, like I'm hypersensitive to like my shit.
Yeah. And
so I a lot of times find myself doing the inventory, like looking at my part, going back to whoever it is that I'm dating and, you know, apologizing or owning it. And when that's not kind of like matched.
Right. Have you dated a sober woman?
Yeah, but it's been a minute. It's been a minute. I mean, that comes with its a whole nother host of like,
right.
You know, like, I mean, two crazy minds in one. I mean, like I've always said like I prefer to date people that are not sober.
Yeah. I get that.
I just like I need a little bit of like the going out, the secondhand smoke. Like I need a little bit of that in my life. Like I have to have some of that. It's like, you know, like, and part of that is like, you know, you're talking to cool people every day on your podcast, you're out and about, and you have your, like, you were born and raised here. For me, I moved to New York City, and my friends that I made here were sober. Then I started the business, which is like based around sobriety. It's like, I need a little bit of
no,
like,
I get that. It's like, you need like, it's like when you go to an all boys school, you need like a co-ed camp.
Yeah. So the life update is you're 6 years sober, you have a child, you're in love, you're happy, like all the things, right? Like, I mean, I think that's what people need to hear, that there are, I mean, you have bad days, I assume. Maybe you don't.
No,
maybe
I do.
Maybe that's your X
factor. But like gratitude overcomes everything.
Yeah.
You know, and like my anxiety is like barely existent because I'm sober. Like my anxiety was provoked by everything I was doing.
Yeah.
And like I do service all the time. You know, I think that's a huge part of feeling good about yourself is giving back to others. And then I think,
I mean, even this is like you saying yes to coming here and doing this, like that. I feel like that's the attitude of people that are in recovery. And what you said to me before this episode was so powerful. And it's something I say all the time. It's like, if we help one person, like if one girl hears this and like feels like maybe they can get sober from seeing me, like, oh, fuck, man, it was all worth it.
Totally. And by the way, like, you don't have to talk about being sober all the time. Like, it's
no,
like,
I know. Yeah.
No, not like you specifically.
Oh, okay.
Like, you have to.
Well, I guess.
You legally have to.
I was like, no, I'm at, yeah, okay.
But I mean, like, the girl who's listening, who's like, oh, I don't want to, like, become that person. It's like, you don't have to.
Yeah.
You know? Like, it could just be, like, part of you. It doesn't have to be your whole identity. Like, which is cool.
And I feel like, I mean, look, by nature of going on reality television and The Bachelorette, like, most of my followers are women, and most of these women are writing in, and they're just so terrified to reach out to anyone. And for some reason, like, they feel comfortable reaching out to me. And my, you know, like, my pivot has to be like, I got to immediately dish to other women who are sober, because that's kind of what we're taught. But it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah.
You know, like, as you know, being public about your story. And like, I just feel, you know, even just when you walked in today, like, we had never met. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what's up? Like, you're like, what's up? And like, we had immediate hug, and it's like, just chill. It's easy. Yeah. Because we know, you know, it's that common bond. So what's next? Like, what do you, I mean, help us promote you, help us let the people know what you're up to.
We hopefully are having you on We Met at Acme is next.
Down.
We're doing in-person events, which is awesome. We do mixers sometimes. Actually, we have a pickleball mixer tonight.
Where is that?
Very interesting. It's in the East Village somewhere. That'll be fun. And what else do I have to promote? Just listen to the podcast.
There's a food account?
Oh, that's like a funny thing I do on the side. It's called Don't Expect Salads. It's really, I started it when I was smoking weed, I ate like a 5-year-old because I probably had like a disease that didn't allow me to like eat real food. Yeah. And I was like, I love chicken fingers. I love pizza. I still love, like, those are still my favorite foods. Yeah. So I started that food account because I like hated salad. And then,
it's a great fallback. I mean, the food influencing is like a whole nother.
Totally. Oh my God. Getting invited to a restaurant for free in New York City is like, that's a win in itself. Yeah. And I just started an account for my mom stuff, so I don't spam.
Oh, you're gonna crush that.
It's just like a fun like little side thing. Started a little mom group. We Met at Baby for all the moms out there, and then We Met at Acme is still pushing along.
How many? My takeaway question is, how many couples in New York City have your fingerprints on them? Like, how many people do you think you personally have?
I have 6 marriages under my belt.
6. Mm-hmm. So you're like, that's the only stat you're keeping is marriage.
Oh yeah, because I mean, not that anything else is irrelevant, but like I definitely have like 50 hookups under my belt, but I know for sure I have 6 marriages.
Were you invited to all the weddings?
Okay, so I have to defend them. I wasn't invited to one of the weddings, but I didn't know them.
Okay.
I just set them up because like it was a friend of a friend and a friend of a friend. And I was like, these 2 friends of friends should date.
And you nailed it.
Nailed it. And I ran into the guy actually at Barry's recently, and he was like, you set me up with my fiance. And I was like, sick.
And that made your day.
Yeah, it was great.
Incredible. All right, well, Lindsey Metselaar, check her out. Inspiring story. I loved your story. It's just fucking cool.
Thank you.
Lifelong New Yorker, 6 years sober. We met at Acme. We met at Baby. Don't expect salads. All the things. Entrepreneur, mom. I mean, X Factor City right there. So thanks for coming on, and I guess I'll see you next on yours.
Can't wait.
Thank you.